Councilmember McClung. Present. Councilmember Swenson.
Present.
Councilmember Moses. Present. Councilmember Cargill.
Present. Councilmember
Moore Jr. All righty, we're gonna say that pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On one state, under God, one indivisible. Big announcements tonight. Happy birthday, Courtney.
Here?
Yep.
All right. I got it. So I was at home and about, I guess, 2 hours ago, I realized there was this meeting. And I had family that just arrived from Dallas and the Cooking States, but I felt like I should come here and say a few things, my experience with the mayor and the city council. Unlike times before, you didn't announce me as somebody that lives outside the city limits, but I do. Just barely. I've got part of my property in ETJ. And so the council and the mayor came to my attention, obviously, when TxDOT started talking about putting bypasses through my property. I'm aware of potholes and some of the other issues because I come in here to shop. So here's my experience as a citizen in the ETJ. I start hearing rumors that the mayor himself is not a citizen. And there's something about signing a mortgage document and claiming a different residence. So I got curious, I did some research, and the only residence that I find or property that he owns where he takes a homestead exemption is the one that's not in the city limits. So now I'm starting to read some credence to this.
That's not true.
Well, it's not, it's homesteaded.
We don't own that property.
It's under a LLC or
No,
trust.
it's a trust my father established for my children. I'm not a trustee.
Well,
or
all the
beneficiary. It's not
rentals
really-
inside Blanco don't have a homestead on them, so,
It's my son's homestead.
okay, and you don't have one.
No,
Okay.
it's on 818 Pecan Street right here.
So, and how long ago did that happen?
2 years ago.
All right, so follow that by, we have a council member that comes on. I have a lot of respect for this gentleman, but he too is not a citizen of Blanco, but somehow he's now on the city council. So here I am in the ETJ and I have no vote. I can't run for any of these offices, but these other people can. So it confuses me. Well, then it gets a little worse. He starts proclaiming, the mayor and some others, that these TxDOT decisions are already made, that we have 2 routes that are being considered, and you know, nothing that I do is going to change that. But TxDOT says completely a different thing. And this is not recent. This has been going on for a year. TxDOT kept saying nothing has been chosen. But I keep hearing, even the city council meetings, oh yeah, it's going here, and then it's going to have an exit to 165. So I'm thinking, does the council know something we don't know? Is TxDOT lying to us? Is this state agency got less credibility and veracity than our city council? I don't think so. So I made some other calls. I know some people. And basically, if there's backroom deals, they don't know about it, but if it turns out that way, I'll do something about it.
Thank you so much. All right.
And I need to go because I'm getting steak tonight.
All right. That's it. Sign up for.
That's it. Thank you so much.
Okay. City administrator.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, residents. I'll speak this really quick. There's really 2 updates I'm going to give you on the water plant. As we've been talking before, filter to waste is on point to be actually fixed, and we are very close to being operational. To let you know, next week So we are actually operating it now, but it's, we're still using Canyon Lake, but next week we'll have what we call back T, which is, TCQ requirement that you take water and get it tested, through TCQ. And so that will happen next week. So the plant's working, but TCQ has to prove the water quality. And then after that, the Texas Water Development Board will do a walkthrough. So that's going to be about the next couple of weeks. So yes, we had said that the water plant will be operational, and it is, but it'll be more operational in the future. But those are the two specific things that are happening with our water plant. I'm very excited for that. The other issue is within that we had talked about a couple weeks ago about the 2024A, which is the loan that we got for $1.5 million that is certificate of obligation. So about half of that $1 million of that has been dedicated to paying for the filter the waste for the water plant. We should have some of those funds eventually, and we kind of discussed that process. So that's $492,000. The balance of that at the next council meeting, council will look at how to spend that. Some of the ideas have been the Town Creek retaining wall, replacing some hydrants, and then we've been looking at options on sewer lines, a couple different locations, including the north side of town, which would open that area up. From 15, and then we've been looking at different locations, which would include the north side of town. So that is really just the update, kind of let you know what staff is working on and where we're at with those two very important projects. Thank you.
Thank you. And you said we don't know yet the effectiveness of the new meters as far as reducing our water loss yet, but we should know those numbers.
Right. So we did have those numbers pulled, and we're still looking at it. What we're trying to do is we're trying to look at last year versus this year, but there are some things that we have to pull. We have earned or had higher revenue this month than we've had some other months, but the percentages and we're still working on because there are some things we just need to double check. We'll have better numbers for you next month, but certainly when I get them, you'll have them for next year.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Police department.
Well, I'm addressing our staffing issues tonight. Currently, we have 6 full-time sworn officers, one of those being in the FTO program with the expected release date of December the 10th. We also have a 7th officer who will be onboarding after December the 10th when he gets to take his TCO exam. That's the earliest we could get it. So our numbers are improving, but not fast enough. That's where we stand.
What's the target number?
9 full-time sworn, and then our court bailiff, which is a reserve, Donnie Nance, and then our admin assistant.
Thank you. Okay, council, PSI water meter project, sort of touched on it.
Right. So PSI water meter project, we are still working on some of the backfilling. There are still some callbacks that we're doing. The next phase is the things that we're basically done, except we're not done. There's probably another 20 or 30 meters that still need to be replaced. There are the next, and then that's one step. The next step is probably a week or two, we should have a portal that is fully online. So Lori, you want to talk a little bit about the portal and where we're at with that? But I didn't think it was quite online yet.
Sure. I think it is. In the bill that went out last week, we sent out a flyer that shows customers how they can sign up for the portal. And if anyone has any questions or problems, they can come by City Hall and we'll be happy to walk them through it if they need extra assistance. But it's pretty user friendly and it should be online, good to go.
Questions about that?
Okay, and told me that, next one about 400 meters.
400? No.
I'm reading the hotspot fail.
That sounds like a typo.
Yeah, that's a typo. Yeah. Oh, to be backfilled.
To be back.
Oh, to be back to
Oh, yeah, no.
I thought you meant
Because
to
it says
slow
they-
down.
Because, Intermark is saving us money.
By back, doing the
Yeah,
backfill.
because,
Yes,
the other
that,
company
that, that could be accurate.
That was, yeah.
I thought you meant
No,
400.
no, because I was turning it.
What's the backfill?
The backfill is where, like, when they replace the blocks and stuff, if there was like, to go back in and fill in dirt or whatever. Or make sure that it's seated properly.
job.
Yes.
Yes, the final,
So
the
you're
final
your
cleanup.
meters without the dirt being filled back in there, so it's.
Final cleanup.
Discussing the pothole and road repair.
Yes, we have ordered, so a couple things you may have seen, you know, of course, we had hired, we had hired someone to do the initial work, and then after that, Denver Barn actually, just to get an idea of how that roller would work, we actually rented it for a month, and then now we have ordered last week, I actually ordered a new roller, and so hopefully, in a week or two, when we get that roller, we'll start seeing, data and his crew working zones. But specifically, I know there's some areas that we haven't caught yet, probably the areas near Cherry Street, and some of that area behind the Skeet and Cherry, that area there needs to be filled. There's some other areas. So we are going to, we basically purchase it, and then we are going to start working on it and getting quotes and start working on it before rains.
Yes, it's gonna rain. You will.
Code of ethics policy. Bobby, you've been looking at that.
I made a couple of comments and sent that to Tim. Everyone update us on status and stuff.
Sure. Well, I did receive your comments. I am ready to, I'll be putting those in over the holiday. This will be ready for meeting in December. I thought your comments were well stated. I encourage any other council members that want to comment. I'll send it back out to you in another red line well in advance of the next meeting. If you want to wait till then and comment, but the more the merrier, so that we can put this to bed December 12th. Done deal. I think the new version will be a little more streamlined. It'll still be pretty lengthy, but more streamlined and less directional in its focus, like do more of statements of principle and behavior, et cetera, et cetera. But I encourage all of you to weigh in on it, please.
That's the approach I took when we were talking about it at the last meeting. Some of it was, even just statutory things about how the meetings be run. We talked about rules of order. So I took the approach of saying, well, what is ethics and what is organizational process? So I just commented on the ones pointed out to you that this is already, we know what the mayor's role is, and we know what the statutory laws are, the way the city must be run, and the single role in the I mean, everybody needs to follow the law, obviously.
Yeah. That'll be page 1. Follow the law, the rest follow.
Hallelujah, follow the law.
But it should be ready. I invite you to comment. Should be ready for your meeting in December. For adoption.
Thank you for working on that.
Likewise, you bringing it up. I appreciate it.
Review of December agenda items. What do we got, Warren?
Yes, sir. So new business, we're gonna look at consideration discussion, take possible action on approval of an ordinance approving policy for a TikTok ban, government issued phones. This kind of has been happening all over the state, and there are other communities that have been banning that, so that we basically don't have TikTok and other things on city phones. Do you think that would be, common sense, but we've been advised to go ahead and that's consideration discussion to possible action on such a city engineer. So what we've done is we we have a review group that we put together, and there's only 5 people that are going to do the review and then make those suggestions to council. Will have an opportunity to either talk to the group or to even talk to the companies that have submitted their applications. We'll go a little bit further into what how council wants to do that, but we are looking at an initial engineer. If they choose not to select from the 4 that have applied, then our current company, Ardura, would still run. We also look at the same type of RFQ process for the IT services. Staff will start reviewing those, and then we'll have a recommendation to council on IT services on December 2nd as well. And those are the new business items.
Warren,
Yes.
for the city engineer RFQ, are we gonna be picking that, selecting it on the December meeting or?
So you as council don't have to do anything, but I think the idea is that you'll have an opportunity to discuss it, to talk to the individual engineering groups if you'd like, to make a decision that month or make a decision the next. It's a big issue. Obviously, we had less people for 3 years, but you may want to take a little bit of time. It's up to you.
Okay, so by the December meeting, the review group will already have happened?
Yes.
Can I ask you a question about, have those companies that are applying, have they visited our installations and do they know what they're dealing with and stuff or not? Or is that common practice?
Well, I've reached out, let me say this, I've reached out to them already. I've let them know the process is. They haven't actually seen an installation. 3 of the 4 haven't. One of them is a previous engineer from several years ago, so obviously they've seen the facility, but not recent. So, of all 4, and then we can certainly discuss how you want the selection process to look like, but no, they have not actually had.
I think that's interesting. And they give you a quote? already?
No, so what happens
Okay,
for all of
okay,
this
okay.
is it's an RFQ. And then it's in the RFQ, once the council makes a decision, they will advise the city administrator, then negotiate the rate. And you may want me to come back and actually, say, fine, we'll go whatever reason come up with, or you may specifically say, give me the rate you want to pay. However you want to do that, it's an RFQ, not an RFQ. It's not a bid.
Be patient, I still don't see all the initials.
Request for qualifications versus request for proposals.
So yeah, they didn't submit proposals, just the
Because yeah, there's the proposal. I did that.
But IT, engineering, most of professional services, it's an RFQ, not an RFQ.
Anything else?
Oh, can I add one more thing?
There's no business, so we can have that.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, the CMAC presentation. Also, OJ wants to do a CMAC presentation, like on a bond election.
So the discussion is they're looking at wanting to do a bond election, possibly for May, could be November. They're gonna have a list of projects and a list of amounts. And the basic idea is that to do what we need to do, and I'll let OJ explain a lot better than me. Actually, if I'm saying something wrong, throw something at me. We're basically going to spend $2.5 million a year to update our facilities and basically restore our infrastructure. It's about 2.5 for every year. But it's going to be 6 to 8 year tranches. That's what they're going to. They'll explain a lot better than I.
Can I jump in on that?
Sure.
Yeah, I would encourage anybody interested in infrastructure to come to that December meeting. Certainly eye-opening for me. There's been some numbers thrown around at 40 or 50 million that the city needs to do things like dig up and repair water lines that are end of life. move the sewer out front of the street, redo the streets, all this infrastructure. Much of this we can't ignore, people that mandated to do it a few years down the road when these things are actually end of life and people coming unsafe, probably, practically. So, and what was eye-opening for me is the number, $40-50 million number has been thrown around. We are at least double that and maybe 3 to 4 times that. So now the numbers that we need to accomplish what we need to do over the next 20 years is between 80 and 150 million. And for a city, and this dovetails into another thing I would like to see at least discussed a bit, or be prepared to discuss in December. With those kind of numbers over 20 years, we have $2 million revenue currently. And obviously we're going to need to do multiple bond elections, get support from the citizens. The city needs to make a concerted effort of how we're going to message this need to the citizens so they don't think we're just trying to continue to bank money and take on more debt. In my opinion, and I think a lot of folks' opinion, we need to get serious about community enhancement and economic growth in the town. Recently, I went to a TML conference on economic development, and don't want to go too far to that, but I think that's a big piece of how we're going to accomplish this over the next 20 years or so. This pyramid, and I'll share this, more publicly, likely when we start the discussions in public, but it's about the basic hierarchy of needs for economic development. From the bottom up, it's infrastructure, talent, real estate, amenities and quality of life, and incentives. The very bottom and foundation of any economic development is infrastructure. If we do not have the infrastructure, Blanco is frozen in time, and for us, that can be a death spiral, in my opinion. We need to get serious about maintaining, and you've heard me say many times, every undeveloped piece of property in the city limits should have city services as quickly as possible, so we can work on that infrastructure. So I think hopefully that will come up, and I think I'll encourage everyone that can to come to this December meeting and hear the infrastructure committee's report. And it was certainly eye-opening for me when I heard the monstrous amount of activity and attention this needs over the next 20 years. And I think that will start that messaging process when we can get the word out to the city. These bond elections are important. And if people are going to vote against that kind of infrastructure improvement and repair, then that's it. Then they need to feel really strongly about that. So, by the way, this meeting is more kind of open conversation.
One of the things that we, Steve, have been working on is trying to figure out, when you look at taxable asset value over time, and you're talking about the appreciation of property as it grows over the next 30 years. And a large portion of his program and the scope of it all was to try to keep the debt to income ratio for the city basically on a 5% line, so it doesn't change. So it's not like you're raising taxes to pay for the election per se. It's more like properties are going to grow in value over time, which then is the revenue that helps pay for that. So it's pretty brilliant way that he's got the structure, but obviously he'll explain in much better detail next month.
And the growth over time comes by new residences, new businesses.
Sure, but even if you
Workforce
have a house
workforce housing, and there are all kinds of things that we can grow without raising taxes. And grow the community with quality of life issues, workforce housing, or business incubators where when our students graduate, they can build businesses in town, and it just feeds on itself if we get that critical mass of community development.
We will do all that without raising taxes.
Without raising, the taxes will go up based on value, obviously, but we don't raise the tax rate if we can keep it at that 5%, 5% based on that.
Yeah,
assessed
what
value.
people putting into the bucket.
I can get here. I'm a big supporter of getting the infrastructure fixed. You all have already gone so deep
the next regular meeting, we're each gonna get 3 minutes to speak for the CMAC presentation. I would ask you to put that on the next agenda for one of these, so we follow the CMAC presentation with the generalized discussion here, so we can have a dialogue, because you're talking financing, you're talking engineering, you're talking all kinds of planning, you're talking development, you're talking a lot of things that got to come together. That should not be just presented by the council and it deserves a lot of discussion.
I read the documents that Bobby sent me, on the classes he took. Now, one thing it stressed again and again, voter approved.
Yes.
So, nothing would be done without the voters.
It gets back to sending a message to the community. You can't do that.
Well, that discussion would start that messaging process.
The only other thing under old business, well, actually, a couple things, but, last month, you tabled the, ordinance, the sign ordinance, and P and Z and Brandon and city attorneys worked real hard on getting that cleaned up, so it's a standalone ordinance. We'll have that for you on December 10th. So I think it's gonna be more business friendly, but in some ways it's gonna look better because you're not gonna have full signs and have some things that we're talking about. So everybody good. And
Not gonna be 175 pages.
it's, who else?
It's signed.
What's what?
So you are doing the replacement of the addendum, basically.
Sorry, so miscommunication, I think we have.
All slim now. It's all done. It's ready to go now.
And the last one, which I think is Councilman Cardinal, knows a lot more about it than me, is approval or discussion about the rainwater collection gutters for Denzel Park. I mean,
Yeah, I don't even know the next.
we probably don't ever take that out. Okay.
No. Okay. Well, Laura.
It fell down.
Want to tell about that?
Yes, so a few months ago, the city of Blanco agreed to be a sponsor for this art contest, Blanco County Runs on Water. And there's a few other sponsors, Southwest Way Alliance, Groundwater District, City of Johnson City, and Texas Runs on Water. And so the winner to this beautiful piece of art, her name was Heather Steele. There was also a youth winner, Autumn Seltzer. And we had a nice event, nice reception event at the library last Friday for the winners and to be all our.
Why, Dan?
It was fun. It was good.
Speaking of rainwater collection, I've did some data gathering, this week, and, I think another item that I'd like to start us discussing as a council is incentives for rainwater collection systems inside the city limits. There's, currently Blanco County has not increased the value of property by the value of the rainwater collection. They do not have any sort of, a tax incentive other than that. Hayes County has an exemption for the cost of the rainwater collection, similar to a homestead exemption or retire the exemption. It's a little bit more robust than what Blanco has. But I also think there's in our surrounding cities, I think Marble Falls and Broken Springs, the city, there's a $5,000 rebate for any rainwater collection that collects more than 2,500 gallons. Storage that stores more than 2,500 gallons. Well, Verde, I think there's a $3,500 rebate. So there's some city rebates. I'm not suggesting that we do this without studying what we can do, what we can afford to do. But I think if we start a discussion, we might be able to get more creative about some sort of discount on water usage or something. We can't afford rebates to incent our citizens to put in rainwater.
Other people ask me if the city is partnering with somebody to offer discount on products, which that would be good.
Anytime we sit together with a variety of items and send people to, you know, I'm gonna say some
All
extent
for that.
of this.
Well, that's great.
put all my ideas back out again, because I've mentioned all of this before in the last 30 years.
You have.
So, put it back out there, so everybody can see it again.
You have to just pound it in.
Yeah, people have to hear something 7 times before they get it.
Also,
Whatever, maybe up one. Yes, sir.
And when, we'll put on the agenda, I hope, that you would endorse an effort to get into the legislature an exemption for general law cities below 5,000 to get you out of these ETJ withdrawal issues and other issues that, you know, it's kind of a schism with TML. They're not all excited about it. So they kind of take care of the big boys, Austins and Houstons and Dallases. But I have had some preliminary conversations, just because I'm over the legislature pretty frequently right now with different ideas and things going on. And I think it's right with the current legislature, this particular group of people. I think you would get their attention. Now, I talked to a lady by the name of Suzanne Belsnyder that I want to introduce y'all to. She has a little statewide newspaper called Rural Reporter. And she's out of Spearmint up in the Panhandle, formerly from Austin, and she's gathered up a host of groups already looking at this issue, smaller cities. I think also the mayor of Johnson City has got something going on. I think when we get you with her.
I went to college with Suzanne.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
over
yeah.
years and years ago.
Yeah, and she's just opened an office here in Austin. Reopened an office, used to be here.
Yeah.
But I think there's an impetus for that to happen. Yeah. That was in the details. Anyway, we'll talk about that in December as well.
Yeah, I did have a conversation with TML yesterday and got the contact for their legislative support. And the person I was talking to, Heather, in the training department, but she said there is an appetite now, for doing that bracketed out carve out of small studies, because it is unintended consequences. The recent legislation was more for metropolitan areas. And so it's 15 miles from the nearest municipality, so it's a little bit different than being in the DFW area.
The ones.
But then I just talked to him, then on Monday I got the legislative contact, so I need to share that with you.
That'd be great.
Now on the agenda, questions from the public. What do we got?
I want to go back to the discussion about the ethics, proposed ethics policy. In the last meeting, we passed an update to the personnel manual. It's called personnel. And I read it after you approved it. There's a lot of good stuff in there that's very specific about what employees can and cannot do. And I would just ask, with all the ethics issues that are floating around in the air in Blanco and with this new policy, that you be sure you look at your own personnel policy and be sure that your ethics policy for your officials mirrors that. You shouldn't have employees held to one standard, and yet the officials are held to a different standard. And I can't give you the specifics right now because we don't talk. Please be sure those are the same, because if you should, your employees should be held to a standard role in that.
I believe that was one of the comments I made that Tim, that they should cover employees as well as the elected officials.
You think bad employees should have the same freedom of speech?
Not necessarily, not on city business, I mean, there's confidentiality, then but there's certain things in there that use elements that should apply.
What else we got?
Well, and let me just piggyback on this, because council member said something interesting. Now, when you're an employee, you have a supervisor, someone that expects certain things. The council has a different role. And I'm not saying they should be held to a certain standard, but they have a different role than their employees. So as we go through this, we look at that, point taken what you're saying, but I do think actually employees should be held to a different standard in the sense that they're actually working for public. I'm not saying they aren't either, but it's a little bit different.
I don't have it with me. Just go through it, because there's some very specific items. You cannot do this. Not your one. And see if that makes sense.
What else we got? How are the Christmas lights coming?
Painful, we got. Again, you're killing me, we got thousands of cuts, but we're gonna do it.
Awesome. See you all out there working.
The Friday at 6 p.m. lighting up.
1 plug and they're all gonna come on.
Awesome. That's the plan. Well, then we're doing a test run, make sure it works.
Will it be like Chevy Chase?
Now,
I was gonna go out
maybe
across
it's
town.
whole fence, that's now. No, it seems good so far, but I'll confirm tomorrow. There is I think there's an executive session after this meeting, right?
It's in the agenda.
So just, is there gonna be a decision? Are you gonna come out of that and make decisions, or should we go home and expect decisions next time? I mean, something on here,
I don't think there's an action item on the agenda, but
well, you can't take actions in there anyway, you could come back out.
there's always that possibility.
Oh, yeah. I should stay.
Don't turn that out every time. You should stay every time. Media or something to keep the crowd warm while we're in executive session. Taking volunteers for that. Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Retta Martin asked me to, she was over having a streetscape meeting today, asked me to bring up again where streetscape is when, especially now, if you all are gonna talk about bonds and more money, you know, this is a long running project that desperately needs some investment from the city. So I think that she would love to hear more about where streetscape's priority fits in when we're talking about growth and economic development. Having nice, safe sidewalks that you can walk down where people, you know, can push a wheelchair or push a walker or push a stroller if they need to. You're missing out on a whole bunch of people coming to shop if they can't walk safely in this town. And if there are not places for them to adequately move around, you know, and not to mention the way that it looks. So I'm talking as a member of Streetscape right now, not as a representative of the paper, and also just on behalf of Ms. Martin. So
Between now and December 10th, I did talk to Ms. Martin today. Between now and December 10th, I will look back at some of the options within certificate of obligation. The only issue is of council saying, okay, we can, you know, we probably add some things, do some things. But the only problem with the certificate of obligation actually has to be a product. So it can't be just an engineering study or an architectural study. We can improve something, and that could be considered an asset, but you can't just have a plan. So I have promised her I will go back and take a look at it, but it has to be an action item, not just specifically, we're gonna pay the architect $30,000. It has to be something like a railings, or we're gonna, whatever it is. So I will work with the mayor and council and with our engineer to see if we can add something as an option to the council. It's up to them what they want to do.
I thought earlier, when we were talking about the CMAC presentation, that they were going to list of stuff. I mean, I don't think it makes COs, it just needs to be money. It comes as part of the bond issue. It comes to CO, it becomes whatever.
I have one comment about streetscaping. It seems to me the long pole of the tent in for funding is the lack of a plan. I know of 3 or 4 private donors collectively, a couple of businesses and a couple of private donors collectively have pledged verbally about $60,000 if there is a plan. And I think that plan has been like watching grass grow. I'm not, you know, trying to insult anybody by that by any means, but I truly believe, and I've said publicly at more than one meeting, that my hope is that streetscape will actually be under construction in 2025. And that was 9 or 10 months ago. The goal when I was on the committee was to have, RFP ready plans by the end of this year.
So
And
my
that's still now months and months down the road.
Right. There are some portions of the plan though that are available, are they not? Or
No,
schematics?
There's some schematic, there's some drawings, some renditions of what it could look like. There's not been a plan that's brought to the council for approval. Yes, we approve this plan.
There's no construction ready plan.
Yeah, you can't do anything.
Yeah.
Well,
They're
there's
just
things about it, you
conceptual
know, you know, and what's the bit, you know, we want these sidewalks fixed, what's it gonna cost to fix? And so people can actually do those kind of proposals.
But did the city apply for a grant to help with planning just a few months ago? To help with the comprehensive master plan? That's money. Couldn't this be part of that plan?
It
Because
could
they
be.
don't have any engineers on there.
Right.
Yeah, I've been wanting to roll it into that with the momentum, so it's baked into the comprehensive master
Yeah,
plan.
donors ready.
That is- that is-
I mean, they don't have any engineers. They're not gonna give you a design.
This project unfortunately has been stalled for years and years and years. And so many concerned and donors that love Blanco, they go, well, we don't know what it is. There's no plan. And year after year, it's like, well, what are we getting our money to?
It needs to come to a point of completion as far as the plan.
And the city should be more involved in that because these are city assets. You're talking about city sidewalks.
Well, it's.
So the fact that the city hasn't had a greater role in that is sort of shocking to me. I mean, I'm new here, but that surprised to me that the city hasn't taken a bigger responsibility.
That's part of the binding agreement that we made between Keep Blanco Beautiful and the Streetscape Committee is that essentially the city kind of has to keep our hands. When they initially put the project together, they did want every 2 years or every year as the council kind of changes direction. That project changes direction. So by design, it was kind of designed to keep the city council out.
But that's not the same as like the city being responsible for paying for it. City council, that's not the same. That's not what I'm saying.
But it was Ron's exactly right. And the idea was years ago, Streetscape Committee would bring a plan to the city council to approve.
The problem is that, the streets, I'm sorry, the problem with streetscape is that the first part of the plan is engineering and surveying studies, which cost, 20 to 25,000 per phase, and there's 3 or 4 phases, depending on how you define phase. But no one wants to pay for the studies. Donors say, well, I don't want to pay for a bunch of engineering drawings. I want to pay for construction. Grants are often tied to, hey, someone else is contributing to this, it'd be the city or the private donation. Grants isn't the first money in, so no one wants to be the first money in. So that's why the
So
city.
you helped quite a bit by just getting the books in order. There was no accounting of what Streetscape had been up to, as you know, and I want to thank you for that. You came in, you took 10 years of just bank statements and said, well, here's the history and here's the funds. And there was no treasury report of any kind. So donors were hesitant to put money in something. Well, where's the money gone? How much did they have? How much did they need? But so there's been a lot of progress made. I truly think Streetscape is poised to get some action going as early in 2025 as possible if we can keep moving towards this plan and the plan has been, in my frustration though, from the time I was on the committee, it was verbal and it would change and say, well, and it was a little bit of a water bug, what are we going to do? And I think there's some more cohesion in the committee itself now that we can get to a plan quickly. But there are people there that are ready to write a check if they know that it's properly going to be accounted for and it's going actually for something important.
Where is the grant money that I was referring to? The grant talking about the.
The GLO, the general land office,
Yeah.
we got an update here.
Yeah, we did get an
this
update
week.
yesterday. And essentially they said, all the callbacks we've done with you, everything you've asked for, you've actually provided it to us. And we are currently reviewing it. I guess there's been some changes. They've done some changes and they're now saying that we are reviewing it. So that's not.
They received a larger
Yeah.
amount of applicants. and they're in the process of going through them. But they confirmed that we had given them everything,
We're just waiting.
So we're just
If we
waiting.
get that grant, couldn't some of that money be used for the seed money that Streetscape uses to keep?
It would qualify, the answer is it would qualify, if it was at the full amount, it would qualify,
Right.
yes. Yes, the answer is yes.
So, I mean, if it
That's
comes
up to
down to-
council, but yes. it
I
would
mean,
qualify.
they know what they want to do, they just can't draw it up. And they're ready to draw, that's what you say you're waiting for, is the plan. Then help them get the plan, help them get the draw.
Well, let's see how much we get.
When is the award date for that grant?
Well, there isn't a specific award date. We've been waiting now for, 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, and their email was, yeah, we've got a lot of applications. That's basically the main, a lot more than we expected, so the positive response. So it takes time for them to work through it, but we've got a good case.
And another possible source of funding for Streetscape would be special assessment in downtown property owners, because they're gonna be the most direct beneficiaries of an improved downtown with improved property values. So, basically, there are funding vehicles through special assessment that allow these taxpayers to pay more of the bill than taxpayers out from the downtown area, but over time, so it's not hit on one tax bill.
It also is like a TERS. TERS, tax increment reinvestment zone.
Yes,
Yeah,
I'm not sure it's in terms.
TERS. No, TERS, and we kick that around a little bit, just see how that's work.
Common economic development tool, like it could use in several parts of the city.
I think the whole planning thing was a really good point. There's so, we have this with Wheels and Feet too, where we can't get any grants because we don't have the plans drawn up, but we don't have any money for drawing up the plan. So I think this is kind of probably hits a lot of our projects around town. And I guess getting a planning grant is great. We should do more of that, but we can't use a CO when, well, 2 budget seasons I've been here have been so tight, there's no money for extra planning projects, so that's a really good thing. I think we should.
That ties right back into what I think Brad said in the last meeting. There is committees, they're all strangling for the same issue. And all the committees, if they all knew what the other guy was doing, would make the message of importance of this kind of thing come across to leadership. That you need to help these committees do what you've asked them to do. If you don't help them do it, they're not going to be able to take that.
Yeah, I do think more of the collaboration between communities.
So you're gonna be on new cross committee liaison now?
Hey,
Yeah,
that-
we need something.
I got that. I've been dealing with, I got with the trouble with that.
Well, honestly, someone does need to organize the committees to organize the meeting. I mean, that would be to raise your hand.
We should set something up for January, maybe after the holidays. And then do it like every 3 months. Just have a recurring, third Wednesday or whatever, like all the other ones are.
Or if each chair wants to send a little thing to me, I can blast it out to I can share it with all the chairs.
Like,
It's
yeah,
just a committee mixer.
like some, a date that's available. Like what?
Yeah.
I just always thought it would make sense if you get all the chairs in the committees, and it's every March, like once a quarter, and just catch up on what they worked on.
I read about it, put it on maintenance tab.
And like the thing is like this funding issue, they all got the same issue, then that is something that they all city council. You want this issue out.
And if the chair isn't available, he can send a representative.
Sure.
But some representative from the committee that knows what's going on. Does that sound decent? In January?
And it's also my hope that the citizens would be open to the conversation starting an actual economic development group would know what the committees are doing and know how these projects and have grant writing capability and formal. I mean, there's towns much smaller than Blanco that have economic developers in the town that formalize and they survive the council meeting year after year after year. And they have a plan. And that's was my hope is going to be the end result of a comprehensive master plan is we formalize a mechanism that plan will be executed by enhancement.
Then you have members of the various committees on the.
But that's a messaging thing that takes a vote of the citizens. And so we have to decide, yes, we think this is good. And that's why I hope people will come and see the infrastructure for us to get the funding to do stuff we just have to do to survive as a municipality. Support from the citizens. Want the community to develop. At the very least, we need workforce housing, affordable housing. That gets by a rabbi, affordable. I mean, workforce level. Middle class starter homes for young families, for firemen and teachers. If we don't have that, I think that's a great start.
We're beyond that now. The cost of living here and everything, we do about stuff like that. It becomes a part of that idea.
We can't have only $400,000 homes being built.
Correct, but
So maybe we look at the smaller lot sizes, you know, smaller lot sizes in certain types of town, but it'd be, you know, as part of that comprehensive master planning process, what the community want, brainstorm with all the stakeholders.
Yeah.
Right,
Right, the cost of construction
That's what
these
that
days
people love on
is
these
so high that
subdivisions.
these days, hate to say it, but a lot of people see tiny homes as the new starter home. And there's some nice tiny home developments might be worth looking at.
yes, I think a lot of there's 10 years. Now, basically,
Yeah, with design, not motion, but.
Well, I think a nice apartment complex in the right location with all water costs too. We're talking about scale, you can reduce cost. I mean, there's not a whole lot of different options for getting $1,000, $1,200 monthly payments on a house.
You got it.
Run out pretty quick,
Oh, yeah.
you know, longer, random, you know, development of houses, all houses. Really,
But the other end of the problem you're into is if we don't have some sort of development, we're coming out of the future of the growth is coming, but at the end of the day, part of it is coming. You get all this stuff developing right outside the city limits, and all those people are coming in. My business won't have enough employees to handle it, but then my employees can't live here in town. And most of my staff lives in Dripping Springs, Waverly, Bulverde, Spring Branch. But then at the end of the day, I'm competing against people that have a business that's 2 miles from their home, so I gotta pay them more than they can make there, so that they come up here. Or send drive my food costs higher than paying a person else. So there's a lot of moving parts, but yes, water, sewer problem, but they're coming.
we definitely need affordable housing, that's the whole ticket right there, $400,000 homes to build it in the ground, you know, not affordable. Not by any stretch of the imagination, so we still don't have homes for our employees and people that want to live here and work.
I got 30 employees, I think, over the time.
Can't afford to live here now, the prices are going down, what makes you think, but.
So I wonder, there's so many vacant homes though also that don't look like anybody's living in them. They're sort of in disrepair of the city limits. I'm curious why there's not some sort of incentive program to encourage people to fix up those properties or sell them.
They're so expensive. Even if it's repair, I thought that was very expensive. And then to have to go and revamp and get contractors.
Or it could be sold if we didn't have a short-term rental.
Yeah. Even with,
Not real.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, you have less zoning and restrictions out in the country. You can put up a mobile home or something, but in the city limits, it's actually cheaper from a ground up perspective because you don't have to put in a septic. You don't have to do all the new transformers and stuff. Generally, it's just very expensive these days. The cost of a slab, in the last few years is talking about $10 a foot to some cases $20-$30.
Well, I'm just
Lumber,
I'm just talking about
everything
like
is so expensive.
houses
no matter
that
where
are
you go.
seen that are like just kind of falling apart. I think
No, I
that's
know.
also like, I mean, there's one on, you've probably seen it because it's over on Con.
Yeah.
It's been empty the entire time I've lived here.
Yeah. A lot of folks say,
I'm curious. I guess if I wanted to be really nosy, I could find out.
well, I do a lot of that, and there's a couple that are owned by somebody that died, and then it's handled up to family stuff, and it's just sitting there, and they keep maintenance, but who knows how long it's gonna fix that? There's nothing that the city can do that, in that regard, when it's in probate. And a lot of them, there's actually people living there that, the owner lives out of town, they rent it to somebody, it's been there for 20 years, they don't raise the rent, and it just runs down, but there's people living there that the owners don't want to sell them. And so it's a step-by-step, case-by-case basis, but I think there could be incentives. I know certainly we talked about this on the square of the business district, for not having places sit empty and put like some kind of, but when somebody has a house that's off the beaten path and they have somebody that's lived there for 20 years paying $500 a month, they don't want to change it. Not a whole lot you can do in that situation. But
Well, can you find people if the property is in disrepair?
oh yeah.
Uh-huh.
For the properties in the historic district, there is a tool available to ordinance that is called a demolition by neglect. If there was a property deteriorate.
Who enforces that?
The head of the historic.
Code enforcement officer, I believe, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to keep the meeting, I don't want to delay your executive session too long, but I would like to, I think at the last meeting, there had been a meeting with TxDOT that some of you went to. And I understand now there's been another meeting with TxDOT that some of the rest of you went to. We're not going into a whole lot, give us the recent on the status.
Yeah, one's very similar to what they said the month before. I guess a couple things that, or at least one thing that was new to me was that they, excuse me, that they're not wanting to have frontage roads. Other than, again, nothing's been decided, but if they do go that way and there is something at 165, there would be spaces there, but they're not wanting to have frontage roads. Otherwise, because they don't want driveways and all that, that's future relief. So that was something that I did hear the first time, or I guess a couple of months ago when we met. But otherwise, a lot of the same things. 281 widening is going on, but this project is not funded yet and all of that. They are, one other thing is, because we talked about it in TPAC, and I didn't realize TxDOT was doing this, but they are doing an evaluation of Blanco right now on speed and lights and all of that. And you're supposed to have to report to us. Sorry for my voice here, a little cough, but supposed to have a report to us, like to kind of what some of the things that we were talking about in TPAC. So I expect to get that in the next couple of weeks to see what we might be able to do in the meantime, with lanes or whatever it is. So. Yeah, and they are still planning for early 2025 workshop limit for to talk about the route. And of course, the no bill remains an option until it's not. And I also encourage them to relay their findings from their review of the city right now for what we can do about traffic. It's 10 years before someone's built.
And one thing I make sure that, look, we're 10 years away from that, we need to leave now. It's getting back. So they're doing light studies and stuff, and there's a possibility of opening up some things. Not a whole lot we can do. Stuff, make it better. Yes.
If TxDOT pointed out that they were not interested in any access roads, which They told me this a year ago. But does that not send the message that there is not any potential of a land rush of developers racing out to the bypass with Buc-ee's and retail shopping centers and whatnot? And if it does, now does it make any difference whether that bypass is a half a mile off of 281 versus a mile versus a mile and a half? Because it doesn't seem like it's going to take retail out of town and send it out there, and it's not going to bring new retail in town to compete by putting it out there. It sounds like they don't want development along the bypass.
I don't think TxDOT cares about it. TxDOT cares about
Speed and safety.
how long it takes to get around Blanco, how safe is it, what's it cost to build the highway.
The issue of the city is if there's not going to be development out there along the bypass, does it matter to the city whether or not it's a mile out?
I think it matters to businesses in town. I mean, I don't know, but when you're driving down the road, you see the blue sign that says, you know, Redbud this way. It can say either 0.3 miles or it can say 3 miles. Most people don't go the 3 miles. I mean, they'll go a short distance for gas, for groceries, for restaurants and stuff. I think that's a consideration.
I think for me, if it's in the city limits, how do we get our water and your sewer across? We already have a higher expense now trying to get our lines across this way. How would we get it across there? And also, we wouldn't be able to take, you know, our small block pattern, which is now an ordinance of the city. Maybe it's a wall of a freeway. They're not gonna put underpasses at every street.
If it's in the city, it's like a Great Wall of China. There's no development that goes beyond it, except maybe squeezing down 165 or maybe 32. Otherwise, there's no crossroads where somebody gets on it and says, oh my gosh, I could have had a candy bar, and we'll just go down to the end of the bypass and turn around and come back.
Yeah. Other than like, we get lumped in if it's too close.
And I would argue that if there is an accident 165, there's gonna be development.
Oh, yeah.
It's gonna be along 165, not along the reroute. It could be all along 165. And granted, a lot of that's outside the city limit. And you won't get property tax and gas tax, but you'll get business in town from people who live in it.
The 3 exit towns I know of, this is the middle one that everybody uses. So that would become the new default entrance of Blanco. So we have to reorient our thinking.
What it's all gonna break down to in the end is how much, economic development Blanco can get going to draw people here. They don't wanna come here, so it won't matter where the side has is. That'd be better off further out. But as long as we have a good economic, infrastructure here and development that will bring people in and make them wanna take that turn off that highway to come into Blanco, that's what's gonna be important. Not worrying about what they build out there, but what we can build here.
Can I just say that economic development would be great, but anybody you bring in here is gonna take a look at the downtown. And anything you can do to help clean up streetscape, beautification of this area is money well spent. Because this is the heart of Blanco right here. And,
Absolutely. We're accepting donations to Streetscape.
Fix the sidewalks.
I'd love to help with streetscape if I could. And you mentioned that there were already investors that said, just give me a plan. Maybe we need to sit down with the investors and say, let's come up with a plan ourselves and then present it to the city.
To be clear, the donors on the streetscape, they believe in the process, but it's been, in many of their, at least 2 very vocal opinions have just been stalled for 10 years and been talking about it forever, and it's not going anywhere.
I saw a plan that somebody put on the screen here a few months ago. I think his name was Burkhart. I saw a plan and it blew me away.
It's one of maybe the last 6 months or so, there has been some cohesion, and I think the time is right, but let's keep this thing moving. But it has been a bit disjointed in the past. And I think it's got some more direction and some more energy on the committee itself. It's has been very helpful. And I'm still a believer that I want to see it happen in 2025. Beautify our story.
There are some really nice renderings from architects, and I've been encouraging them to, let's get that in front of the public, because we can they can come and deliver their plan with everything goes, and if the public hasn't weighed in on it, it's certainly, it could totally be upset, depending on how that goes. So I've been encouraging to have, maybe even like a tech stop, how they do theirs, and just have it set up on easels and people walking around and interacting with it and sort of getting their mind around it. Be cool to do it outside and have the easel set up next to where you can say, here's what it is now, here's what we want to do. And maybe have a walking tour. There's a lot of ways to get the public involved, get people excited about it. Doing that with the investors or donors would be a good thing. But we got to get the people behind it. It's having drawings that may flash up on the screen during the presentation. It's not the same as everybody being, knowing it, understanding it, being excited about it. So that's what I've been advocating.
Going back to TechStop, at that meeting, we also, I'm the one that did, I stressed that at the January meeting, it be like the meeting that they had in Twin Sisters, that Jonelle just orchestrated perfectly, but there was interaction. It was like this interaction. You could actually ask them a question and they would answer. They didn't just, you didn't just look at a piece of paper. But it was a lot one-on-one, and we had a lot of the state elected officials there, or their office, their office staff. The Twin Sisters meeting was an exemplary meeting. It really was. But it was more intimate, and that's what they were also saying. They would probably start doing smaller groups.
Yeah.
So they could get more down into the weeds and get more one-on-one with people, which I think is good.
One last thing I'd like to say is that on the city website, there was on the agenda, there was going to be an executive session. I know that's been removed, or is there still going to be? Or it's not on.
It's on the second page.
It's on the second page.
So anyway, I'm hoping that they'll have that executive session because there was an allegation from the mayor that committed perjury. And I think that definitely needs discussion. I know you can't do it out here in open session, because that's a legal matter, like in the city. But I also like to point out that since it does involve the mayor, that he cannot participate either. He cannot comment. He should listen, but he cannot have any opinion or comment or anything about it during the discussion. So I just don't know what the city's going to do. Now, Chief Thornhill is obligated under the code, whatever it is, that he has evidence of a crime, that he has to submit that to a magistrate jurisdiction. And I think all the city council has to do is support the sheriff or the chief and his duties, responsibility. So there you have it. That's all of y'all now. But there has to be something done. This cannot be ignored. That's hard yet. Sorry.
Probably following the law is probably part of it. I'm sure.
We'll be doing this there. The executive session.
What you were done with that, I'll just check it.
You guys ready?
Answer water question?
Sure.
A couple years ago, the city had to spend like $1 million fixing the water treatment plant. They had to put a 5-year note to pay for that. And there was talk at the time, well, when it's fixed, we'll roll the note over to something longer term. And has that been done, or is there plans to? Because part of the tax problem I've got this year was that you had to make the first of 5 large installments on that note. And
That's a good question. I don't know.
So specifically, are you talking about when I think we did take out money that we put in the 6-year tax credit? Is that what you're talking about?
It was about 2 years ago, the $1 million thereabout 5-year note, and the first installment came due this budget season. I want to say it was like 200,000.
Well, I'm drawing a blank right now.
Okay, I'll send you the information. Maybe I'm doing that. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it.
What other?
That would be on refinancing.
Yeah. I think that was the council's plan, was to, once the plan was fixed, then roll it over to like a 30-year note.
And we would, if that's the case, we'd roll it over, but I'd have to look at what you have.
Anything else? All righty. Well, let's go. We're gonna close the public portion of this meeting.